Hello and welcome to the Sharp Edge podcast, where we provide valuable insight and advice on the marketing and other business type questions that painting contractors encounter as they work towards achieving their goals. Now here's our hosts, Martin Morgan and Becca Hackley. Welcome to the Sharp Edge podcast, a podcast that's all about being the ultimate marketing and business resource for painting contractors. In this episode, we are going to be talking about pay-per-click and Google Ads. So, Martin, we are jumping right in with Google Ads and pay-per-click, also known as like PPC. So how are they related to one another?
Hey, Becca. Well, if you look at those two things, let's just say Google Ads, pay-per-click ads, like you said, PPC. PPC or pay-per-click is really like the parent category, let's say, of Google Ads. So Google Ads are a version of pay-per-click ads. And in most cases, there's multiple different ways you could look at Google Ads, and it's similar to what you might find for pay-per-click. But really, there's three major versions of Google Ads that you might consider. One of those would be search ads, which are the ads that show up usually at the top or maybe the bottom of your search engine results page when you search for something. So those are typically either like 1, 2, 3 at the very top of the page after a search is conducted. Sometimes you might conduct a search and there'll be no ads there. So those are search ads. And then you have display ads, which are those displays, advertisements, what almost looks like a typical newspaper advertisement, you might think, but it's digital. And they often appear in websites that you'll visit. So you might go to your local newspaper website or something like that, and you see those ads within there. A lot of times, although it's not on Google, it's actually Google that gets those ads. You pay Google to place those ads. So those are display ads or header ads that you might see. And then
Hey,
there's
Martin,
yeah, sure.
I have a quick question. So the display ads, do they often appear as photos, like pictures? Like, can you pick, or am I thinking of it just entirely different?
They'll certainly appear as images that are photo based. So
Okay.
they might be something like a typical ad where there's a significant photo that's placed there.
Okay.
But that's really a good segue in what you might be seeing in those cases, Becca, are a special type of display ads, which are remarketing ads. And remarketing ads are advertisements that you can place, digital ads that you can place, and you can say, only serve these ads to those people who have already visited my website. And so a very common way you might see remarketing ads, they could be like Amazon ads or some other e-commerce type ad where you have looked at a specific product and all of a sudden, you see that product everywhere on every website that you go to after that. So those are remarketing ads.
Oh my gosh, and it's happening constantly, especially now, like we're kind of in the Christmas time of the season. So are you kidding me? All the things I've ever looked up on Amazon are all popping up everywhere.
It's very fun and funny to see those because you're exactly right. You really start to notice those show up everywhere you go.
Everywhere. So we broke down Google Ads and pay-per-click. Did I interrupt? Was there more to it? Am I good?
No, that's
Okay.
exactly right. I think we covered every piece of that one.
No, yeah. Okay. So you said there was 3 parts of Google Ads, right? That's what
Yes.
you had said?
Yep.
Okay.
So really there's the search, there's display, and then there's the special category under display, which is remarketing ads.
Okay. So where are we going to see those specific ads pop up online?
So we'll take it from the one we just talked about and work our way
Yes.
back. So there's remarketing ads. You can see them anywhere you go on the internet. So any website that's willing to take advertisements and they use the Google platform or accept Google Ads platform, they can show up anywhere. Same is true for display, really, which again is kind of the category above remarketing. And then the search ads, they appear on your search engine results pages after you type in a specific search that either, as I mentioned earlier, often you'll see them at the top. Sometimes they aren't on the top, or sometimes you'll also have them on the bottom. It just depends. It all happens like an auction. And without getting too detailed and having everybody have their eyes glazed over, sometimes an advertiser is not willing to pay enough to rise to the top of the search engine results page. So they show those ads at the bottom. If you see a bottom, depending on whether you're doing desktop or if you're on mobile search.
Yeah, yesterday I was actually reading about when people are looking either on desktop versus mobile, it talks about like the F-shaped pattern of while you're reading on the desktop. So, where do your eyes go? Where directly is like your first pattern of focus, whereas on mobile, it's called a D-shaped pattern, just on how wherever, like I said, like where your eyes go. So it's just interesting to kind of know where your ads are going to pop up, because that will really make a big determination of whether or not people are going to be paying attention to them or not.
And those things to me also, Becca, are extremely interesting. I love to look at that stuff and just human behavior. And then you see, especially how some of these big tech companies are totally manipulating that in order to get their ads served and looked at by, their users or subscribers or whatever you may call them. But there's a lot of really cool science that goes into those things for sure.
Yeah, so that makes me wonder though. So will the Google ads come up first in search before the organic search results do?
Most often they do. That is not always the case, but most often they do. In part, it does depend on the bidding system, on the
price
auction
of how much they're willing to pay, essentially.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly right. And how popular the search is. So Google won't often sell ads. And the way that it's set up when it comes to search is you bid on certain keywords, and you can restrict it really tight, or you can open it very broadly. So you can say like exact match. I want this exact match for house painting in in very specific locations based on zip code, and maybe even more granular. And then within there, you can say exact match, so only when house painting comes up, or you can say broad match. So, and through broad match, it may include some other things that wouldn't be an exact match. So let's say if you say house painting and somebody types in home painting, if you do exact match, you wouldn't be on that. But if you did broad match, you would be. But it gets really sticky, and you want to be careful, because if you're doing this and you're jumping in and doing it yourself, and you're looking at these keywords and you allow it to do broad match, Google wants to sell ads, right? They make money from selling these ads. They want your money. They want to make it easy for you to buy. And so through broad match, you may be opening yourself up to a whole bunch of keywords that really don't fit what the audience that you're trying to get to. So, just be careful and really monitor those things for sure.
Yeah, the clicking will become irrelevant if it's so many things. I mean, then you're just throwing money down a hole.
Right, you pay, and it's pay per click. You pay,
yeah.
Your bidding works for how many clicks you get. So you pay for those clicks regardless of whether they ultimately give you a call or take any other sort of action. So something that as we get closer to talking about, okay, who does this work for, who doesn't it, or what do you have to be careful of? Those are definitely the things to be cautious of, and why you really want to look at it with a really close eye, as far as, okay, think about all the circumstances of how this is being set up and what that could mean, and set your restrictions as tight as possible to start, because if you set them tight and you make a mistake, it might mean that you missed a few phone calls you could have gotten, but you can build that out. If you set it too broad, the bad side of what happens there is all of a sudden you owe Google $1,000 for 2 hours worth of ads, and you're going to be like, wow, that is terrible, and it's hard to then restrict it tighter, or you can't get that money back, really. It's gone. So if you start small and build out, it's a much better approach than if you don't really look tightly at it, and all of a sudden you realize, wow, I just spent, I could have made $1,000 last a lot longer at a casino at a $100, blackjack table than the $1,000 I just blew here on Google.
I think that's the part that makes me super skeptical about this whole thing, because you can't control who are clicking on your ads. I mean, your best bet is, like you said, getting those keywords and making sure that you're in that location of where you want the people to be clicking and viewing. But I mean, it's totally out of your control. There can be some fourth grader cruising on the internet and clicking around. So, and there goes your money.
Yes.
But I mean, I guess we kind of know what happens when someone clicks on an ad, but I mean, do you get charged each time they click on it? Like, is that mostly how it works, or is it like every so many they get charged?
So for the most part, it gets set up so you get charged every time somebody clicks on an ad. And you used an example like of a fourth grader, and there are other examples, and that's a good one. One might be, depending on how it's set up, a lot of times on mobile, the way the ads come up is people will accidentally click on something. And, it can be on YouTube, it can be in mobile apps, all of those things. And all of a sudden you start to see, you get a bunch of accidental clicks from a specific website or a specific app or something like that. But it doesn't really matter because you're paying for every single one of those. So yeah, you get charged for those. Sometimes Google does try to detect fraud. So if there's outright fraud, where somebody's specifically just trying to crush you,
hammering it,
yeah, exactly, then they'll refund you or they won't charge you for that. But in most cases, an accidental click isn't fraud, you still pay for that.
Yeah, ouch. So I believe that you can set a limit per day or whatever with money that you want, but what happens if that allotted money for the day is used up because X amount of people clicked on your ad by noon?
And that's a very important part too, Becca, is as far as restricting it. As I said, start really tight and expand it. Don't start expansive and tight. You want to pay a lot of attention because you can set a max for a day. So set whatever you're comfortable with. You want to set your max. Think about what you might want to spend in a week, and then set that for a day. So if you set that, let's say at $20 in a day, once you reach something like $20, Google's going to stop showing your ads. So to answer your question, yes, once you hit your ceiling, once you hit your max, they stop showing your ads. But there's a slight delay. So Google doesn't automatically shut it off. And even if you set your max at $20, there may be days where you're still paying $30 in that day. And you ask yourself, at least I ask myself, how does this happen? Google's such a master at all these things, but they can't just shut it off right at $20 or not bid above what you might if you only have $5 left, why would they let you bid $15 for an ad? They shouldn't, but somehow they will. So you might even, as you set your max, you might even want to set it a few dollars below what you really want your max to be, just in case there are those days. And let's say, again, start small and then adjust based on what you see. You can always expand that, but similarly, if you're like, oh no, I don't think, I'm just going to set it at 50, probably not going to reach 50, and all of a sudden you get 5 days in a row where you spent $60. That's $300, and you were thinking you had $300 for a whole month. Now you've just blown your money in that short period of time. If you get customers from that, awesome. Or if it turns into dollars, then that's fantastic. But that the max is there for a reason. So once you reach it, you're going to be done. And then Google's going to continuously reach out to you and say, hey, your ads aren't reaching the audience that it could. You want it to reach everybody. And you have to be cynical about those things that they send you. You got to look at them closely and say, no, I'm doing what I'm doing now for a reason. I'm not interested in completely expanding my advertising budget. So you get all this money, Google, and I'm not sure if it's really working for me yet.
Is picking times a thing with Google Ads? Like, are you able to be like, oh, I want my ads on from 9 to noon, or, maybe at night, like
Yes.
6 to 8 p.m.? Okay.
Yes, you can absolutely pick your times. You can decide when you want it to show. So we do have done a fair amount of advertising with Google and Google Ads, and you can pick your time. So you want to use those times where you think your audience might be more likely to be looking for the services that you offer and or be responsive to the ads that you serve. Depending on your market, that might change. You might find that the evenings are really great for you because that's when people are home and they might be more likely to be
Sitting on the
searching.
couch.
Right, exactly. They're going through Facebook and looking at this other website and such, and they see it and they might be more likely to react, as opposed to if they're working all day, they may not be. But it's also something that you can test. So Google is really good about giving you a pretty good amount of data, and usually on the screen, the dashboard screen, you can see it right there. It shows you when you get most of your views and clicks. You can adjust that, and maybe you say, hey, I don't want this to just start all day, and because so I've made this mistake where I didn't keep things tight enough, and I also didn't set the times. So ads started showing at midnight, because
Oh,
that's the next day. And 2 minutes into the next day, we had already spent $300 in
no.
2 minutes
Oh my
because I
God.
didn't set it tight. Yes, it's terrible. Personal experience. It was really bad.
Right.
But what a learning experience, right? So
No
I won't
kidding.
make those mistakes again. And that's why I'm passionate about these things and trying to help people not make the same mistakes that I have, for sure. But 2 minutes into the day, we spent $300, and not a single one of those clicks was something that was going to bring any value to us. So,
Man.
setting the time is a smart thing to do.
So clearly there's a lot of risk involved. I mean, you have to just the timing, the amount of money, you have to be smart about where and when they're showing up. Because people are just they're gonna click around blindly. So dang, that's a good story that you should keep sharing with people just so that they can be aware. I mean, 'cause you're gonna spend all this money and get zero in return.
Right, and I'm not happy to share it because
I know.
I can still feel like the anxiety hit me as I mentioned it,
Oh,
but I am happy to share it from the standpoint of, look, I've done this, I've made this mistake. It's easy to make mistakes on there, and that's part of why I mentioned you want to start as small as possible, and remember you can always little by little build on. But if you start way too broad, you may have a
there's no going
scenario.
back.
It's true, and I don't want to hear stories from painting contractors of making the same mistake I did, if we can help them not do that.
When people are clicking around time, whatever the time or day, are you able to actually see the data of like how many clicks or where they came from with Google Ads?
You can see some data. You can definitely see how many clicks that you got. You can even see impressions. You can see your cost. For the most part, you can see a good amount of data. Uh, you can somewhat see where they came from. So you can look at where your placements were, and then you can see how many impressions and how many clicks you got from each one of those placements. And placement would mean, the websites where they clicked on your ad, or and this would be if it was display or remarketing, um, or the app where they clicked on your ad. Search is search. And so you would see that and you would know it was search, but you can see some of that data. And even with the display ads, which would include remarketing, if you see sources where people have seen a lot of impressions, whether it be a website or an app or something like that, you can eliminate them from showing any more ads on that specific website or app. You just go in there and you eliminate that. So you might do that if you feel like the cost is way too high. So you can also see the cost per click. So let's say, you see that this one website, and maybe you don't think it's worth being on there, because for whatever reason doesn't fit, but somehow you pay $25 for a click from this one website, and your max is $20, and you're like, well, geez, if anybody sees that on there and I get one click and I'm done for the day, you may not want that. So you can eliminate that from the options of where they show the ads.
Are you able to choose? So I know that you can pick if you don't want an ad to show up on a certain website. But let's say like American Painting Contractor or, PCA, those type of sources, are you able to choose and say like I want it to come up on this website, or you're not able to
No, it's
finagle?
got to be something that's, it's a really good question. It's got to be some entity, a website that is on the Google Ad network and for them to show there. But if those were two places that you really wanted an ad type thing to show, I would certainly encourage you to reach out to American Painting Contractor. I know they'd be happy to talk with you, and it's a great operation. And similarly, we have great things to say about PCA as well. So. If those were areas that you really wanted to hit for whatever reason, then those are probably two likely places that you would have to reach out directly. But you can kind of tell if you go to a website if they take ads and if it looks like it's from the Google Ad network, because if somebody all they have is if it's a media outlet like APC, chances are they're going to have their own ad sales business within that organization. If it's something else, that may not always be the case. And I think I started off mentioning like local newspapers, which they're cutting more and more of their people, and instead they're just using the Google Ad network. I see our ads on their on our local newspaper, so I know that they accept them as well. So you can kind of tell. But if there's some place that you really want your ad to appear, see if it starts to show up, or do a little digging to see if it looks like they accept the Google ads.
That's good to know. I was curious about that. So if I was a professional painting contractor, I hear your stories. I hear kind of what to look out for, what maybe doesn't work so well, or maybe things that I need to do the right way. But how do I know if Google Ads is even like a thing I should try?
And that is a great question. And I can give some recommendations or some ideas who it might be good. It might be a good fit for. And part of the good thing and the bad thing is that Google makes it really easy. Like you can just set up an account and go in there and set up an ad. And you don't really know if you did anything right or wrong, or if it's going to help or not, or if you're not careful, you may not know how much you're going to spend. So you want to be very careful. It takes time and attention to do well. So I think if you're going into it, I think you want to make sure that initially, as you're starting to set something up, you want to at least carve out an hour or two that first day that you go in there. And you probably want to make sure that you're carving out 30 minutes to 60 minutes at least a day, especially early on as you get started, to really jump in, take a look, see what's happening, make any decisions about what you might want to change or not change. And then, jump back in the next day. Okay, I did this, I did that. Log everything that you're doing, so you've got a running idea of how you may have tweaked things. Take a look, readjust. So you either need the time or you need to have the money to pay somebody to do all this for you. And there are definitely some groups out there, some agencies that can do a good job. Sometimes the management fees are really high, so be cautious about that. And part of that is for good reason. It's a challenging thing to do well at repeatedly over and over. And somebody who has clearly proven that they're very good at that, that money can be very much well worth it. If you're considering it yourself too, a couple of things or circumstances, let's say, where it could work well for you. If you don't have a website, you can jump right in and you can still do Google Ads. Now you're gonna probably want to send them somewhere, but you could do it for search and just make them call you. So that could especially work well for you on mobile if you didn't. And then the other thing is if you get a new website, so search and SEO can be really good. SEO, meaning a website, can be really good complements for each other, but for websites, they take a while to start searching well. And with pay-per-click ads or Google ads, immediately you can buy your way to the top. It may be a total waste of money, but if you're willing to pay enough, you can buy your way to the very top of the rankings. So you can jump right up and get in there and go. And sometimes that gives you good cover while your website is earning SEO rank. You can do complementary advertising through Google Ads that help you give you cover while your website is working its way up the ranking. So they can work together from that standpoint as well.
So, I mean, I'll ask this, but before I ask it, maybe I'll answer it for myself too. So I was going to say, would you recommend our customers using Google Ads? But before you chime in, I think you answered it in terms of if you're willing to pay the money and if you're willing to keep paying the money, well, fine, do it. But otherwise, the website it will be there. It's not something that you're going to keep paying for as you click. I mean, do you have any, I guess, more concrete answers to my question?
Right. It depends in part on the situation, and like you said, how much somebody is willing to pay, because or if they have the time. So if you have the time to put into it, especially somebody comes to us and let's say they're new, they're a new painting contractor, or maybe they're not new, maybe they just haven't had a website before, maybe they've grown and they've got a couple of crews out there and they really want to drive to get the work, or whatever the situation may be, and they come on board with us and they have a brand new website, they haven't had one previously, and they're interested, they really want to drive work now. Then in that case, we would probably say, hey, you may also want to really look into PPC, because it could be beneficial for you to especially drive some traffic or drive some opportunities while you're waiting for the website. It really depends. It depends in part on somebody's capacity to be able to handle more work. It depends on what their marketing budget looks like and how much they're willing to spend, how big they are, how busy they are, where they are kind of in the evolution of their business. There's multiple factors there. So it is kind of a case by case
subjective basis.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fair. I mean, hey, you're honest about it at least. At least you're not like, yes, you need it, or no, you don't. I mean, so that's great. I'm glad that
the other thing about that, Becca, is I would say is I would never tell somebody to stop doing something that's working well for them. So if I, in talking to a painting contractor, let's say somebody was talking to us about potentially using us for their website or any of those types of things, if something's working great for you, then by all means keep doing it. If you're seeing a great ROI, if you're already doing PPC and you're seeing a great ROI, then that's awesome. Keep doing that. That's not something that you want to stop unless it stops performing for you. So certainly another key piece would be to really look at the ROI from these investments that you're making in the different areas of marketing and see if it's performing for you. If you're spending $500 a month on Google Ads and you're not seeing anything from that, well, that seems to be an easy decision. Either you need to course correct and change what you're doing, or you just need to stop doing it.
In terms of a financial decision on this, clearly it can get expensive depending on what you have it set as, but is there a certain point where there's a stopping point? Like, how expensive can they be? I mean, can it go up to just crazy numbers, or does Google at some point kind of put a stop to things, like if it gets to be insane?
It could be as expensive as the number of potential clickers and customers are out there.
I was afraid that was the answer.
Right, of course. Google will serve the ads and take as many clicks as they can get, because every time somebody clicks on that ad, they're making money. So they're going to show it to everybody, and for the most part, their feeling is also going to be that and probably we would all say, hey, if we keep getting clicks, I don't care if I'm paying $5 for every one of those clicks, if it ends up meaning that we're getting, $50 worth of business per click. So that's a good ratio, that's a good ROI. So as long as everybody's happy from that standpoint, it works. But they can get where it can really get out of hand is if you're paying a whole bunch and you're not really getting any sort of return on investment back on that. So that's why, again, probably can't say it enough though. Start if you're just getting into it or you're thinking about it, start small and test. So you can control to some extent how much you do spend based on setting your daily caps, based on when you show your ads, both hours and days. You can mark it off. And let's say all of a sudden you spent more than you wanted, you can pause them as well. So that's why that daily management piece, especially early on, is really important.
Besides spending lots of money, or you're not having enough time for it, or you simply just don't even want to put in the effort. I mean, is there another reason why somebody wouldn't want to try Google Ads? Like, am I missing any big things here?
You covered the big ones, so not having enough time to manage it well, not a good ROI. Another thing where it comes into play, and it's something to consider, is this is a jukebox, right? So you keep plugging quarters into that machine, it's going to keep playing your song, but as soon as you stop, it's over. So you don't get any long-term benefits. There's nothing from a long-term standpoint to be gained. Whatever you're going to get from that, you're going to get right away. And as soon as you turn it off, it's done. It's no longer helping you. So, some people get turned off a little bit by that because it's not a long-term investment. It just contrasting that with a website or SEO, websites take time to build SEO and to search well. But the great thing is, for the most part, the more you invest in that, the better off it continues to perform. And even if, even if you stop like proactively, let's say, in investing in that, you have already gained a lot as long as your website is live and still there. Let's say you work to develop a bunch of content early on, or you're continuing to do these things, but it's still there and it's still performing with you, and it can still grow. But that is not the same thing at all when it comes to pay-per-click advertising.
So with your jukebox analogy, that made total sense to me, because I'm thinking the benefit of not using an ad versus just using SEO like in your website, that SEO is going to be the one that moves you forward, that continuously will help you grow and be seen, and you will see that as time goes on. Whereas with the ads, like you said, once you stop putting in those quarters, it stops playing your music. So I'm right in that comparison, right?
Yes, absolutely right. SEO and website is a long-term investment, and PPC is really short-term.
And then let's say a business is searching really well online without any ads, but then they end up getting Google Ads to give it a shot. Could this hurt like their organic search results for their website?
It shouldn't. It really, so technically Google would say the ads, whether you have an ad or not, has no effect on where your website ranks in the organic rankings. So if somebody is doing great in organic search and then decides maybe they need a little boost, or they're just trying something out, they do some ads, it shouldn't at all affect where they rank, where their website ranks in the organic search results.
Okay, which makes sense, and I mean that's a fair, like, logical explanation too.
Yeah, there are very cynical SEO people who will tell you that buying ads definitely impacts how your website ranks, and they would tell you that it definitely helps you. But Google stands the line that it doesn't affect the website ranking. Those are two different things, so it shouldn't impact it.
We'll begin to wrap this up, Martin, but just one more question for you. So what would you tell a painting contractor that's like trying to figure out, should they do Google Ads or should they just focus on their SEO? Like, I mean, what are some pros, cons? What would you tell someone?
Pros definitely is with Google Ads. Again, you can buy your way to the top tomorrow if you want to. if you're willing to spend enough money. And so from that standpoint, if you need some immediate business and you've got the time and effort to put into doing it well, it can definitely work for you. When it comes to ads, you can get your way right up there. Benefit is you can also be shown in lots of different places. So if you're doing something like, I'm definitely a fan of remarketing ads where you can have your ad served to, let's say, homeowners if you serve the residential market who had previously gone to your website just like that. And those things can be effective. Like you said, it follows you all around the internet. So there's definitely some pros. And also, as I mentioned, if you've been doing it and it's working for you, that's great. And it certainly can expand your reach. And from a con standpoint, if you're just talking about ads, you just have to be very careful with how you set it up because you can lose a lot of money really fast. So you want to start carefully, conservatively, and build your way up. If you are doing it yourself and you've gotten through like 3 months, you get a pretty good feel for where you are. You started small, you've built it out, you're seeing a pretty good ROI. Then you can be in a good spot and then you know where you are and you don't necessarily have to spend that 30 minutes to 60 minutes a day. You may even just knock it down to 5 minutes on most days, except for one day where you're looking at it for 45. But one of the cons, again, beyond being very careful about the expense side of it, is as soon as you shut it off, it's over. So you're not gaining any sort of long-term benefit from your investments in pay-per-click, which contrasts specifically with SEO or a website where it's a very good long-term play. The more you put into the website, and as the website's there longer, it builds an authority in Google's eyes, especially if you've got really good content and or if you're keeping it fresh. It's going to build in expertise, which is also really important from a Google standpoint. And the thing is, still, if you look at the search results or what people click in, the majority of people still click in the organic search results. And a lot of people have trained themselves just to skip the ads. So that, as far as a location and where you are, organic search is still, far and away the place where the majority of people end up clicking. And I think that's especially true when they are looking for local services. It's either the local pack or the organic search results a lot of times. So there are definite benefits of both. And sometimes it also depends on your market and how people are used to shopping or what their tendencies are from a search standpoint.
So really, like you've said, it will kind of just depend on the case by case, whoever the painting contractor is, what they're looking for, and what they have time to do, what they can spend. So if you're a painting contractor and you're listening to this, if you have questions or you want Martin just to explain a little bit more or me to ask more questions, reach out to us. We love to have that conversation because the opinions and just different perspectives that you will read online, either from blogs or Google, anywhere, they're going to vary. So when it comes to the topic of Google Ads, if you have questions, reach out to us and we're always happy to help.
I agree, Becca. I'm happy to answer questions. I shared my sad story with everybody, so obviously I'm willing to be transparent about these. I've definitely had some experience and would be happy to talk you through what you might be thinking about from a Google Ads standpoint. And then one last thing, I also want to mention that to you. If you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe. We really appreciate it. We're glad to have listeners, glad to have the opportunity really to help painting contractors across the U.S. and Canada, wherever you might be. And any way that we can help, we're happy to do so. But if you subscribe, you'll get your alerts and make sure that you don't miss one of the podcasts.
Thank you for listening to the Sharp Edge podcast. If you want more information about this, please visit propainterwebsites.com and head to our resource center. We plan on hosting a podcast each month, so subscribe. You won't want to miss out. Also, we just have one last favor to ask of you. It would mean a lot to us if you would share this with your friends or other painting contractors. Our goal is to help you succeed, so you can help us achieve this goal by telling someone else about the show. Thanks again and have a great day.